leaseholders from footing the substantial costs of the safety works. But MPs rejected this. Let's hear more from Matt Hodges-Long from the Building Safety Register. Was that a surprise, Matt?
It wasn't a surprise that the bill passed. No, I think with an 80-seat majority, I think it was fairly obvious that it would eventually, but it went down to the wire.
But the housing minister last night, Christopher Pincher, said the Lord's plan was inappropriate and unworkable, meaning that you simply can't have taxpayers bailing out that many leaseholders. What do you think of that?
I think where the taxpayer is responsible, or the government, on behalf of the taxpayer, where they've created the problem, then I think it's only fair that the money to remediate these problems should come from the taxpayer. And I think where we can identify that responsibility lies with the builders and the designers of the buildings, then it's only fair for them to pay their fair share of putting this right. I think the key point is that the only party that should not pay for this are the innocent victims of the crisis, people that bought the flats in good faith.
And the argument from the building companies, as I understand it, is nothing that they did at the time was illegal. So if there was a problem, it was the government's problem in drawing up the safety regulations.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both, really. There will be cases where the builders built in accordance with the building regulations. That's fine. There's a lot of evidence where they haven't built in accordance with the building regulations. So that's why we need to understand on a building by building basis what the root cause of the problem is, and therefore who should pay what percentage of putting it right.
The taxpayer is paying some, even under the new legislation. So tell us what the government setup is. There's a government fund, is that correct?
Yes, there's a government fund called the Building Safety Fund, and that's £5.1 billion, which is for buildings over 18 metres or 7 stories, effectively, for their external wall remediation. So that's the only fund at the moment. You mentioned in the intro about the loan scheme. That doesn't actually exist yet. That is an idea with no underlying detail coming forward from the government as yet.
Right, but if that comes in, that would be not for the taller buildings, which are covered, but for people in those shorter buildings, effectively.
Yeah, it's for the middle band, the mid-rise, which are the 11 to 18 metre buildings, of which there's about 76,000 of those blocks. And then below 11 metres, so sort of up to about 4 stories in height, there's absolutely no funding solution whatsoever even proposed at the moment. And we think, the government think, they don't know, there's somewhere between 1 and 2 million of those blocks.
One presumes if you live at 4 stories or below, you would be much less worried about fire, though.
You would think so, but there's been a number of fires recently in the last couple of years post-Grenfell. The most recent one was in Arborfield a couple of weeks ago, complete loss of that building. We've had Richmond House in Worcester Park. We've had Barking Riverside. All of these fires are in buildings that are below that magic 11 metre threshold.
So you think that between 1 and 2 million blocks would not be covered as things stand?
Absolutely, but we're not sure about the 1 to 2 million. The government haven't measured how many of these buildings there are, so we're trying to find that out at the moment. But that's the planning assumption they have, is anywhere between 1 and 2 million.
Thank you very much indeed, Matt Hodges-Long from Building Safety Register. Let's talk to Steph Pike, who lives in a flat in Bristol. And that will have been very disappointing, last night's vote for you, Steph.
Yeah, the vote was extremely disappointing. It was just a bit of a crushing blow to all of us who have campaigned so hard through, a lot of people have been campaigning for 3 years now, since Grenfell, and just the Lords fought so hard for us, as did so many backbench MPs and MPs from other parties. But it was such a shame it didn't get through.
Well, there was quite a big rebellion on the Conservative benches, but not enough. Now, your building is it just under the minimum height required for compo?
No, it's actually 19 metres, so just over, although it has actually been rejected on the basis of height for the Building Safety Fund at the moment. And I think that was an administrative error with the plans that were submitted, so hopefully that will be sorted. But even even if we do have a successful application, the fund for the buildings over 18 metres only covers the removal of cladding. It doesn't necessarily cover all of the other fire safety defects that are being discovered. And therefore, that means that leaseholders will still be liable for bills of tens of thousands of pounds to sort out these other defects.
Can you tell us about the costing for your building? How much the total cost? Assuming that you get no compensation, what would the total be?
The total cost that we've applied for the Building Safety Fund is £7.6 million.
Really? And how many people does that have to spread between?
So that's 109 of us. So you're looking at an average of £70,000 per leaseholder.
Good grief.
But, yeah.
So you are hoping that they will realise their mistake with the height of the building and come in and say, you can have half of it at least?
Yes, but anyway, I'm not confident that a lot of it will be covered, or I don't know. There seems to be so many buildings getting rejected on various grounds, and the government say they put forward all this funding, but they're not releasing it to anyone. And in the meantime, everyone is paying extortionate costs for waking watches, having fire alarms fitted, and this all goes on. And in addition to that, the government has said that no leaseholder will pay more than £50 a month for those who live in buildings under 18 metres. But again, there's no details on the loan scheme. People are paying thousands each month for these interim measures. So it's just not true. And we're not getting the help that we need now, and we need the help right now.
And how is it for you? Because it's nearly 4 years since Grenfell, so that would have been the start of you and your friends in the flats beginning to realise there was a problem, and it's just a lot of stress, I imagine.
Yeah, it's very stressful. It's kind of taking over my life and the life of most people who are involved in this situation, I think. And you kind of live, breathe and eat cladding at the moment. It's just all consuming, and it's like having a second job.
Thank you very much, Steph Pike, who lives in a flat in Bristol, which it seems doesn't qualify. Let's talk to Peter Cardwell, who's a former